Hello everyone, Michelle from Sugarprism. Today I'm going to teach you how to make these cute little vintage bunny ears and feet. For this project I'm using fondant mixed with a little cornstarch to help dry it up faster. Or you could also use gum paste for this. For the ears you want to roll your fondant fairly thin. Measure your cake and decide what size you want your bunny ears. Now cut 2 stencils in the shape of bunny ears. One is going to be just a tiny bit smaller than the other one, but try to make sure they're pretty close to the same shape. Try to find a cardstock a little bit heavy like this for making your stencils because you are going to be airbrushing on top of them. And I think that peak needs to come down just a little bit. That looks pretty good. Now grab your fondant cutter, and I like to use the attachment that has the little waves on it. That way when you cut your bunny ears, it kind of gives it a sort of a fuzzy bunny texture along the edges. And you'll see when you lift those out, how they look like little kind of fuzzy on the edges. Isn't that fun? And here I'll show you how I made those bunny feet without a bunny foot mold. For the feet, you want to roll your fondant a little bit thicker. And then here I'm using just a teardrop shape cutter. So we're going to want to cut 2 of those. And then set them side by side so you get these cuts at the same level. And I'm cutting them very diagonal because what that's going to do is it's going to tip the bunny feet outward, kind of like his little feet are leaning outward like that when we put them on the cake. Next I'm going to use a medium-sized circle cutter, and I'm just going to put a little indent to measure where the little pad of his foot is going to sit. And we're going to cut out 2 pieces with that same cutter in just a bit. Next, I'm going to roll the fondant fairly thin, and we're going to cut out the pads of the feet and 6 little toes. Make sure before you make your cuts that those 3 little toes will fit nicely on the top of the foot. And then we're going to cut 6 little circles. And then next we're going to use that same medium-sized cutter as we used when we measured the pad of his foot to cut 2 circles. And then next we're going to start attaching those little toes. And water works great with fondant or gum paste to help stick them on. It just takes a small amount. You don't want to put too much water on that because it will start sliding around. Very little bit is all you need to help stick the toes and the pad of the foot on there. And then you're going to stick the pads of the feet on the same way with just a tiny bit of water. And whatever you have left over, just turn that and cut off the excess. I'm using the Sugarprism Edible Acrylic Hottie Pink color, and we're going to put just a tiny bit in our palette. Now you see me just adding a little bit of water to dilute the paint. And then you're going to paint all the pads and the little toes with that Hottie Pink color. It's such a smooth and easy to use paint. It works like real acrylic art paint. Ta-da! Cute little bunny feet. Next I'm going to use the Sugarprism Edible Acrylic paint mix to do some airbrushing. Here I've got some winter white, and then I'm going to add just a pinch of teddy bear brown on top to make a beautiful light brown color. I add enough water to the paint mix to make it about the consistency of chocolate milk. That's normally what I airbrush at. You can make it a little bit thinner, but that's really the consistency that I prefer for airbrushing. And into the airbrush it goes. I always make sure that you cap it off really good. Now grab the smaller of your 2 stencils that you made earlier and set it on top of that ear. For this next step, what I did was I used a decorative tile stencil. You just want to make sure you have a pretty stencil that fits over the top of your bunny ear. I like to use this 80 mesh screen print for holding my stencils down because it just holds them down nice and smooth and evenly. And then we're going to give the edge of that stencil, you know, the part that isn't covered with your stencil. So we're just giving a little decorative edge with that light brown color that we made. And then for a little bit more fun and kind of a little more vintagey look, I'm going to sprinkle that Sugarprism paint while it's still wet with just a tiny bit of the edible gold glitter. Check out what a beautiful decorative edge that makes for your bunny ears. Isn't that fun? And then you just repeat the same process for the second ear. Next, I'm going to show you how to paint those pretty little vintage roses on a small piece of fondant before I put them on the bunny ears. And for the roses, I'm using the Sugarprism Edible Acrylic Hottie Pink and Boysenberry. For the leaves, I'm using Scotland Green. And you only need a tiny little pinch of each color. Sugarprism paint mix goes a long way. And of course, we're using the Sugarprism Natural Bamboo Artist Brush Set. And for this job, since we're making miniature roses, I am going to pull one of the smallest brushes. I believe that's a 3-0. The Sugarprism Edible Acrylic paint mix gets diluted with water. You can use vodka for a faster dry time, but most of the time I'm just using water to dilute it. See how those beautiful vibrant colors activate when you put the water in there? I love watching them turn colors. This paint mix is so vibrant and opaque, it truly does work like real acrylic art paint. It's a wonderful vanilla flavor. And even better, these colors do not expire. Not only that, Sugarprism Edible Acrylic is so versatile. You can hand paint with it, stamp with it, airbrush with it. You could do so many things with it. It truly is a wonderful, versatile edible paint product. Okay, for the roses, I like to start with the darker color because the center of your flower is darker, and always work from the very tip of your brush. So picking up a little bit of the boysenberry, all you're going to do is just going to make a little curly Q, almost like an ampersand. No big deal. And then what you want to do is you want to just start making tiny little swishes back and forth, and then they kind of get smaller as they go down, just like that. Let's do that again. So little curly Q and then swishes all the way down. It's super simple. Now these are going to look a little bit funny because I'm going to do all of the low lighting first, all of the dark colors in these first. And make sure when you're painting these flowers on your fondant or your royal icing or whatever you're painting on, make sure you tip them off into different directions. You know, just like in nature, you look at flowers and they're on a bush and they're in all different directions. And then these two, I'm going to put two side by side. Okay, you don't want all of your flowers separated evenly across your surface because then it looks a little strange. So I'm going to put these two even touching onto each other, just like that. Okay, don't be afraid to make some smaller. This one I'm going to put going off of the edge of my canvas a little bit. Don't forget to do that. Don't be afraid to go off the edge of your canvas because your roses are going to look a little bit more natural that way. See how quick and easy that is? And honestly, I think the less you think about this, you know, you just sort of go for it. The less you think about it, the easier these are to make. Also try to hold your brush at more of a vertical versus horizontal angle, because if you work more from a vertical angle, it's going to be easier to work from the tip of your brush. and you'll be able to achieve more fine lines. Now here you see me making just two little teardrop shapes, and what those would represent are little flower buds that haven't started opening up yet. And then I'm going to put another little tiny one up here. And then let's just fill in the rest of our canvas. And again, make sure you go in different directions. Make some of your flowers bigger, make some of them smaller, a few on the edge. Okay, now I'm going into that hottie pink, and now we're going to highlight. So we started with the low light, and now we're going to come in with that hottie pink and just add a few little swishes, just a little touch of color in between those dark lines that we have. And now you're going to see they're going to start looking more like a little rose. Now they have more depth and dimension. See how easy these are? And they just always remind me of the vintage dishes that my grandma used to have. She used to have those vintage dishes with the little blue miniature roses on them. And I always think of that when I'm painting these. And you could use this design on so many things: dishes, fabric, shirts, purses, all kinds of different things, cookies, cakes, you name it. Okay, so I think it does it for that. And then we're going to go in next and we're going to use the Scotland green, and we're going to dilute it in two different consistencies. You're going to see how easy the leaves are to add. And I think after you get the leaves on, that's when the whole thing just comes together and just like really pops out. And you could use different colors for the leaves, but I'm going to show you how to use one color to get a different effect just by changing the consistency. So for the base color on the leaves, what I'm doing here is I'm adding a little extra water into a small portion of that powder, and I'm making it very translucent, very light. Okay, and then all you want to do is you come in and just do a very basic leaf shape. See how I do a little skinny one that kind of represents a leaf from the side? But for the most part, you're just doing sort of an eye or a teardrop shape. And some of the flowers might have two leaves on them in the same area, and maybe one on top. Maybe some of the flowers have three leaves, maybe they have one leaf. You really just sort of have to mix it up. You don't want symmetry. You know, there's nothing really symmetrical as far as flowers. And as you look at your canvas, look at the different areas that might need a little filler. So make sure your leaves are going off in all different directions. And then I'm going to put one coming in from the outside because, you know, there's probably a flower kind of hidden off over here, and that leaf is coming onto the canvas. So don't be afraid to put some things, you know, some flowers and leaves off to the edge of your canvas. And just have fun with it. I just love painting these little flowers. It's very relaxing and it's so pretty. And sometimes you just want to step back a little bit and just take a look at your flowers. Make sure, you know, those leaves are kind of here and there, different directions, and there isn't really like a lot of white space that you're kind of missing. For the finishing touches, what you want to do is you want to take the rest of that green and mix it up to a medium to thick acrylic consistency. I just love mixing it. It's so smooth and creamy. Look at that. You should be able to pick it right up on your brush when you have the right consistency. And this is where these leaves are really going to pop out now. Now making sure, again, you're working right from the tip of your brush. Just pick up the smallest amount of that paint. And then all you're going to do is you're just going to go on the leaves. You're not really outlining them. You're just sort of giving them little swishes here and there. Sometimes it's on the left and the right. Sometimes you might have a little line down the middle. But you're just adding the smallest amount of that darker green color onto that translucent base color that we put on there. See how it just pops those leaves right out? You're adding a little dimension and depth to that. See how it brings those leaves to life? Just that added little line, little swish here and there, just pops them right off of the canvas. And have fun with this. You don't have to use these colors. You can paint these flowers any color you want. Sugarprism has so many beautiful, vibrant, opaque colors to choose from. Okay, and then last but not least, I'm going to just add a little bottom, little foliage, little bottom part on those little buds that haven't quite opened up yet. And then for me, it's just a personal preference, but I always feel like if you take a little bit of one of the colors that you're using, just add teeny tiny little dots just here and there, not too many, just here and there as little fillers in those white spaces. It really gives it that vintage look. So I just like to finish off with just a little tiny dot here and there. Like I said, not too many. Doot, 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 doot. Isn't that pretty? And for that, I'm using that is the boysenberry color that I'm using for that. Isn't that simple? These are so easy to paint, and I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful finished look. And that is that. Now you can go paint those on your cute little vintage bunny ears. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and happy painting from Michelle at Sugarprism Premium Sugar Art Products. And of course, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to our channel for more free sugar art tutorials.